May 7, 1945. A prisoner of war camp outside Augsburg, Bavaria. The war had been over for less than 48 hours. Colonel Werner Brandt, 46 years old, former commander of the 9th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, was sitting on a wooden cot in a canvas tent, writing his 7th formal complaint. The cot was uncomfortable. The mattress was thin. The blanket was rough American military issue, not the kind of thing an officer should sleep under, not a colonel who had commanded 4,000 men across 3 countries. His first complaint, filed May 2nd, concerned the food. American military rations, canned meat, white bread, powdered soup. He wrote that the food was insufficient in quality for officers of the German Wehrmacht. He requested German food prepared by German cooks. His second complaint concerned sleeping arrangements, shared tents, no privacy, 60 officers in one large tent. He argued it was degrading and contrary to the Geneva Convention. His third concerned sanitation, cold water only, no hot showers. His fourth demanded recreational facilities. His fifth protested the confiscation of sidearms. His sixth complained that American guards didn't use proper German ranks when addressing them. Brandt wasn't alone. Across the camp, 200 German officers were filing similar grievances. Majors complaining about the coffee, captains complaining about the beds. One lieutenant colonel filed a formal protest because his tent had a hole in the roof. The complaints reached Colonel Robert Hayes, the American camp commandant, 41 years old, Philadelphia. He'd been running POW camps for 5 months. Regular soldiers ate whatever was put in front of them and were grateful. The officers were different. Hayes tried to handle it locally, sent responses explaining the camp met Geneva Convention guidelines. Brandt's reply was another complaint, this time about the dismissive nature of the commandant's response. Hayes forwarded the file up the chain, division, corps. On the morning of May 8th, the day Germany officially surrendered, the stack landed on General Patton's desk. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the World War II stories about justice, consequences, and the moments that forced people to face what they'd done. Dachau was 12 miles from the POW camp outside Augsburg. 12 miles. It had been liberated 11 days earlier by the 45th and 42nd Infantry Divisions. Patton had been there himself. He'd walked through the gates, seen the rail cars filled with corpses, seen the barracks where 1,000 men were packed into spaces designed for 200, seen the gas chambers, the crematoriums, the survivors, skeletal figures in striped uniforms who could barely stand. Patton had walked out of one barracks and vomited. A man who had fought in 2 world wars, who had seen men blown apart by artillery. Dachau made him sick. He'd ordered German civilians from the nearby town to be brought to the camp, forced them to see the bodies, the ovens, the piles of shoes, forced them to help bury the dead. That was 11 days ago, and now, on his desk, formal complaints from German officers who wanted better coffee. Patton read every single one. His aide, Captain Richard Jensen, watched. He knew the signs, the tight jaw, the narrowing eyes, the absolute stillness before the storm. Patton put down the last page, stood up, walked to the map on his wall, traced a route with his finger. Augsburg to Dachau, 30 kilometers. Prepare transportation for 200 German officers, trucks, armed guards. Tomorrow morning, 0600. Sir, are we transferring them? In a manner of speaking, we're taking them to Dachau. Jensen's pen stopped. I want these officers to see it exactly as we found it. And Jensen, I want survivors there. Former prisoners, volunteers willing to stand in that camp and look these officers in the eye. The next morning, 200 German officers were told they were being transferred. They assumed it was good news. Finally, someone had listened to the complaints. They were being moved to a better facility. Brandt sat in the lead truck with his typewriter. He turned to Major Eckhart beside him. About time, the Americans respect process, file the proper paperwork, and eventually the system responds. The trucks drove south through Bavaria. Beautiful countryside. May sun warm through the canvas. Some officers relaxed. It felt like a holiday. After 30 minutes, the trucks slowed, turned off the main road. Concrete posts with barbed wire in the distance. Guard towers. A gate. Words above the entrance. Arbeit macht frei. Work sets you free. Brandt's face changed. Every German knew those words. American soldiers ordered them out, formed them into 4 lines of 50. Patton was waiting inside the gate. Full uniform, 4 stars, ivory-handled revolvers, face showing nothing. The officers were marched through. 200 men walking through the entrance of Dachau in formation. Patton spoke, calm, controlled. "Gentlemen, you have submitted numerous complaints about your living conditions, your food, your beds, your water. You have argued that your rank entitles you to better treatment. I brought you here to provide context." He turned to the guards. "Take them through. Everything. Every building. Don't skip anything." The tour began at the barracks, wooden buildings designed for 200 people. The Germans discovered the Nazis had packed over 1,000 into each one. Bunks stacked 3 high. No mattresses, just raw wood stained with years of sweat and blood. Prisoners had slept in shifts because there wasn't room for everyone to lie down at the same time. A German major interrupted. "This is propaganda. No facility would house people like this." The American guide looked at him. "The survivors we found here are in hospitals in Munich right now. You want to call them liars? I'll arrange a visit." They saw the punishment cells, 4 feet by 4 feet, concrete, no windows. Prisoners locked in for days, sometimes weeks, standing because there wasn't room to lie down. They saw the medical experimentation rooms, tables with leather straps, documentation on the walls, hypothermia experiments, prisoners submerged in ice water while doctors recorded how long it took them to die. They saw the crematoriums, 4 ovens, brick and iron, the doors still open, the smell still there 11 days later, a sweet, thick smell that lodged in the throat. Then Patton showed them what he had arranged. Outside the barracks, standing in the May sunlight, 37 former prisoners, survivors, volunteers from displaced persons camps around Munich, skeletal. 11 days of food had not undone years of starvation. Their faces gaunt, eyes enormous in thin faces. Some stood on their own, some leaned on canes. They didn't speak at first, just stood and looked at the German officers. The officers couldn't meet their eyes, looked at the ground, at their boots, anywhere else. An old man stepped forward, pointed at a German colonel. "I know you. Plaszow, September 1943. You walked down the line, pointed left or right. Left meant the quarry, right meant the train. Nobody came back from the train. You pointed my son to the right. He was 12. His name was Jakob." The colonel went white. "I was following orders. I wasn't—" "You smiled. When you pointed at my son, you smiled. I remember." Silence. A woman came forward, pointed at a major. "Ravensbrück, 1944. You came for inspections. Every time you came, women disappeared. You selected my sister. She was 23. Her name was Hannah. I never saw her again." She pulled up her sleeve, tattooed numbers on her forearm. "I was there. I remember your face." Patton let it continue for 3 hours, survivor after survivor, pointing, identifying, speaking names. The German officers responded the way they'd been trained, following orders, didn't know, wasn't there. The survivors didn't argue, they just stared. The evidence around them spoke louder than anything. Patton assembled the officers in the Appellplatz, the same open square where prisoners had stood for roll call, where they'd been selected for work or death. You complained about your food. You just saw where men ate grass and chewed leather from their own shoes, where people starved to death within sight of a kitchen that fed the guards 3 meals a day. He paused. You complained about your beds. You just saw where 1,000 men slept on bare wood, standing up, next to corpses that weren't removed until morning. Another pause. You complained about dignity. You just saw where human dignity was systematically destroyed, where people were reduced to numbers, starved, beaten, gassed, burned, not because of anything they did, because of who they were. He looked at all of them. You are officers in the army that did this, and you have the audacity to complain about cots and coffee? You are alive. You are fed. You are safe. Nobody is experimenting on you. You are being treated better than your country treated anyone who walked through those gates. If you cannot understand why that is already more than you deserve, you have learned nothing today. Take them back. The trucks drove back in silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody complained. The formal complaints stopped. Completely. Immediately. Not a single grievance filed after May 9th, 1945. The guards noticed other changes. The officers ate everything on their plates now. Every crumb. Some saved bread, tucked pieces into pockets. The habits of men who had seen what real hunger looked like. The survivor named Moshe, who had identified the colonel from Plaszow, gave an interview 2 days later. It doesn't bring Jakob back. Nothing brings him back. But the man who pointed at my son was uncomfortable today. He was afraid today. For 3 hours, he knew what it felt like to stand in a place where someone else decided what happened to him. That is not justice. Justice would be Jakob alive. But it is something. The woman named Rivka, who had confronted the major about Ravensbrück, disagreed. They walked through the camp for 3 hours. Then they got on trucks and went back to their beds and their food. 3 hours. My sister was there for 11 months. A 3-hour tour changes nothing. She was quiet, but I said her name, Hannah, out loud, to the face of a man who might have been responsible. He heard her name. That's worth something. Not much, but something. Patton never publicly defended the decision. When asked about it weeks later, his response was brief. They complained about privilege. I showed them what the absence of privilege actually looked like. If that bothers them, good. If you had been in Patton's position, would you have loaded those trucks? Would you have driven those officers through those gates? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about justice, consequences, and the moments that forced people to face